Hello everyone, welcome back to this lecture series on research methods. This is the fourth video on research methods, and let's do a quick recap on what we have discussed so far. So the very first thing you need to do is finding a research supervisor and a research topic. And after that, you need to understand the topic well. Therefore, you need to do some background study. And then you come to defining the problem. This is known as the problem statement of the research. And then you set goals, you set a name and a few objectives for the study. And if it is needed, you can draft a proposal and submit it to the relevant parties. So apart from this, we did another lesson on referencing and citations. So what's next? Some might think that the next step is conducting the research work, your own research work. But no, the answer is no. You need to fulfill another requirement known as conducting a literature review before you can begin your own work. Right? So in the literature review, what we do is we study the previous research work. So this is not the first time a researcher doing some study in your particular research area. You are not the first person to do it. So previous work is available to us. Therefore, we need to look back and see what has already been done. Right? So throughout this lecture series, we told that research is about finding new knowledge. There's a level of knowledge already available to us, and you are trying to fill a gap with some new knowledge. So to fill that gap, we need to know where we are at the moment. So to find out where we are, we need to conduct a literature review. So if you do the literature review properly, it will show you where we are at the moment, and you will understand the present status or the present level of knowledge that is available to us. Right? So in my previous videos, I told you this is like a journey. So you will be just taking a couple of steps forward in this journey. Right? So if you look back, you will see a lot of work done by the previous researchers. If we just take a few typical examples, hundreds of years ago, we had people like Archimedes, Nicholas Copernicus, and then later on, we had people like Alexander Graham Bell, Madame Curie, and in the recent times, we had Albert Einstein, Stephen Hawking. So thanks to them, we came a long way. We have come a long way, and we are not going to stop there. So you are a part of that journey. You will be taking a couple of steps forward, and that journey will continue as long as this human race exists. So before you begin the literature review, you must understand why we are doing a literature review. There are several objectives. So if you just do a literature review without having an understanding as to why we are doing a literature review, your review will be of no use. So the basic idea behind this review is to summarize what others have done. We are not going to develop any new theories or arguments, right? The term itself says this is a review of literature. Literature means the research publications that are available to us from the previous researchers. So we are just going to read them, we are going to refer to them, and then we are going to summarize what is available in those publications, in those literature, and we will just summarize and we will try to have a good understanding on what has already been done. That's it. We will not be coming up with any new outputs. That is really important, right? So you will refer to a set of literature and the output would be just a summary. That's it. right? What you will have at the end of the literature review is actually a chapter of your thesis. So this is basically about reading and writing. There is no other work involved. You will have to look for research articles, publications. You will have to read them. You will have to write a summary on them. Right? So if you do this properly, it will show you like in a timeline how the knowledge has progressed, how particular science you are studying has evolved over time. For example, if we take the telephones, way back, we had a solution for communication, a wired communication solution. So that solution evolved over time, right? You can see the different products that were available to us. So since the day the telephone was invented, so if you are doing some research related to this particular area, you will see how the technology, how the solutions, how the concepts evolved over time. So this is like how the knowledge progressed. And today, this is the product we have. Like in another 10, 15 years, we will have something new, something that is already in the development stage, or maybe something that is only at the conceptual development stage, or maybe something that has never been thought of even. We don't know. So when you do this, you will realize current status of your research area and where it should be headed, where you should go, right? And that has to align with your research objectives and your expected outcomes, right? Another benefit of doing literature review is you might sometimes find out that the particular topic you are about to study has already been studied by someone else, somewhere else, right? Maybe not in your country, maybe somewhere else, right? Maybe not in the recent times, maybe sometime back. Somehow, if you find out that the topic has already been done, you may have to do some changes in your study because you can't change the previous work. Either you'll have to change the topic, or else you will have to alter the topic, or maybe you'll have to change the focus area, or sometimes you will have to go for a completely new topic, right? But remember this as well. You have heard the phrase, don't reinvent the wheel. Yes, that is true. You don't have to repeat what someone else has done, but it doesn't mean that you can do it in a better way, right? So when humans invented the wheel hundreds of years ago, it was just a basic wheel which did not have any other functions available, right? But with time, people tried to improve it, and today we have these tires with us, or as wheels, whatever you call it, and they have safety features, they have functional improvements, like they facilitate high speeds, they can be turned, and they have a lot of other features with them thanks to the research done on wheels, on the tires. So we kept doing research on the same solution over and over again to make it better, or else using new methodologies. Therefore, sometimes you can redo what has already been done by someone else in a better way, using a new technology, using a new method, or else to come up with better outputs, or else to improve the already existing solution. That is also a possibility in research. And After the literature review, you will have to start your own work. You will have to do the research work of your particular study. So for that, the very first thing you would need is a methodology. You will have to design and develop a methodology for your own research. So to do that, to develop a methodology, you will need some help from external sources. So through your literature review, you can fulfill that requirement as well. You can refer to previous studies and see what sort of techniques, methods, and tools they have used so that you can consider them when you are developing your own methodology. Right? So here also you can see, like many years ago, we used to do manual calculations. And then came computers. Then we started using computers to do our calculations. So a research that has been done using manual calculations can be done again with the use of computers. Right? And later on came different software applications where we could model the entire thing even without doing calculations. Right? So different techniques, different methods have been used by people in the past. So you can refer to them. Again, you can make some improvements and choose your own methodology for your research. So in this particular example, if you feel like there's a better way than modeling to do the research, you can go with that method. Right? So that's the positive side. So let's look at the negative side. Sometimes you might come across research publications that mention the drawbacks of the methods they use, or else the constraints, the barriers, obstacles, problems, all the issues they faced while doing the research. So you can be aware of those things as well, because if you know about these things, you won't make the same mistake in your research. Therefore, this is also another purpose of doing a literature review, to know what you shouldn't do in your research. And some other benefits like understanding the knowledge gap. Yes, true, we have some kind of an understanding on the gap that we are trying to cover through our research. But with the literature review, you will have a sound understanding on the present level of knowledge. Therefore, with that, you will know exactly what the gap you are trying to fill with your research. And as I said before, if you need to change or alter your research topic or your research area, that can also be done after the literature review. Also, different approaches to the research can be identified. And you will also know the limitations that you have. We will discuss about limitations and the scope of the research later on in this video. So these are the purposes, or else these are the objectives of doing a literature review. And if you want to develop a proposal, an improved proposal, here through the literature review, you can finalize the resource requirements and the timeline and maybe the external support you need. Right? So all these things can be finalized after the literature review. So usually in funded research, you have to finish the literature review before you submit a proposal. This changes at the undergraduate level. So depending on the situation, where you write the proposal will change. Usually, as I said, in funded research, the proposal is written after doing a thorough literature review, because you need to convince the funding agency that this research is needed and the justification comes through the literature review. Okay, so let's move on to conducting the review. So to conduct the literature review, the very first thing you need to do is you need to plan the review. How you are going to do the literature review, that has to be planned. So first, identify the focus area, what you expect from the literature review. So you have set the foundation by defining the problem and setting objectives. So on that foundation, now you need to do the literature review so that it will create a proper link with your methodology. Right? So the 3 stages we are discussing. First stage is the preliminaries, like the background, problem statement, aim and objectives. Second stage is conducting the literature review. Third stage is your methodology. Methodology means your own research work. So there should be a proper link between these stages and a good smooth flow in your work, especially when it comes to your theses and maybe your presentations. Right? So identify a focus area. Think about the relationship your literature review will have with the methodology, and also think about how it would link with your preliminaries like aim and objectives, problem statement. So identify the focus area or else your expectations out of the literature review. Then just draft a flow, maybe some subtopics or else just a flow chart or something. Use some tool and you build up a flow. Right? And then you can start looking for resources. And I told you, literature review is about writing and presenting your findings. So always remember that people will be reading your thesis, and if you are presenting it to an audience, there will be people listening to you. So you should make sure that your findings are properly communicated and understood by other people and other parties. And also always use simple language and short sentences, but you need to use appropriate technical terms. Right? So there must be an introduction and then the body of the literature review and some conclusions. Right? So how you get information, or else where you can find information? Right? So the answer to that question is through publications. We discussed a little bit about this in our previous video on referencing and citations. So there are various sources available to us to extract details or information to conduct our review. So generally accepted types of sources are the ones that you should consider in your literature review, right? For example, books that are available for referencing. Not every book, you can't use storybooks, right? So the reference books that are available with technical information related to your research area, those books can be referred when you are doing the literature review. Journal articles, conference articles, or conference papers, these are really good sources for you to get information. And any official report, annual report coming from an official body, those things can be referred. Websites, again, as I told you in the previous video, don't refer Wikipedia or social media. Any official website or as any other website with some kind of a credibility can be referred. And then interviews, patents, periodicals, and any other miscellaneous sources such as press conferences or as an official video, a newspaper, anything can be referred. So you need to use your judgment and see if these documents or the sources that you are referring to, whether they are credible and reliable. So that's up to you. You need to verify the authenticity of those sources. And another thing to remember here is make sure that the sources that you are referring to are pertinent. Sometimes now we are in the 21st century, so there can be papers from 1960s, 1970s, depending on your study. So 1950s, 1960s, that's like 60, 70 years ago. So if your literature review is limited to those old studies, old papers, old publications, then you have considered, or else one can say that your knowledge gap is not up to date. Right? Your understanding on the present state of knowledge might be questionable. Right? Therefore, it's okay to refer to old papers coming from 1950s, 1960s, those ages. That's okay. But you should make sure that there are papers coming from the recent years as well. Right? Not just papers, any resource that you refer to, there should be a chronological order of references up until the recent years. Otherwise, there would be a problem with your literature review and with your research as well. Right? So find enough research publications and read them, and then do the reviewing of those resources. So another good strategy to find out if the publication is relevant to your study. So you can first read the abstract. When you get a research paper, the very first thing you see is the abstract. Abstract is like a very short version of the research paper. Within like 200, 300 words, the authors summarize the paper, the entire paper, including the method and results, conclusions, and everything. So they put it at the beginning so that anyone who's reading the paper can first read the abstract and get an idea about the entire paper. So you can use the abstract to see if the paper is relevant to your study or not. Sometimes the topic might seem like relevant, but when you read the abstract, you will understand that the paper is not relevant to your study. Therefore, it cannot be used in your literature review. Right? And in reports and other documents, we have an executive summary. So that is similar to abstract. You can read the executive summary and get an idea about the content of the entire report. So instead of reading the entire document, first read the abstract or the executive summary and see if it is relevant to you. And then only decide whether you are going to include that in your literature review or not. Right? So that's about planning the literature review. Now let's move on to synthesizing information. That means now you have read everything. You have gotten a good idea about the present level of knowledge, the previous research work. Now it's about writing and presenting your findings. So to write your review, there are 4 techniques available. So the best way to do it is to summarize, right? The details, the information you've collected from other publications, you can summarize it and present it as your literature review. So summarizing is a technique that is used by almost every researcher to conduct the literature review. So summarizing means you read a lot of content and you write the same thing with a very limited number of words giving the same idea. Right? If you read a 6-page research paper, you should be able to summarize it into maybe a page or half a page. So that is summarizing. And sometimes it might be difficult to summarize because you can't reduce the content. You have to write what you found in a particular paper or a section of a paper as it is. For example, if only the conclusion of a particular paper is important to you, right? So you can't summarize it. You have to extract all the information available in that given in that conclusion. So in such cases, you can use this other technique called paraphrasing. Paraphrasing is you are expressing the same content using your own words. Without copying it directly, you are writing the same thing down with your own words. So the difference between summarizing and paraphrasing is summarizing will reduce the content. 6-page document will come down to a half a page paragraph in summarizing. But in paraphrasing, a 2-page document will come out with 2 pages, but in different words. So the size of the content will not change in paraphrasing. Apart from those 2 techniques, we have 2 other techniques, quoting and copying. Quoting is about referring to something has been said by a person or any party. So you have to repeat it. For example, if you are referring to a law, right, like Newton's second law of motion, you can't change the text because the law cannot be changed. You can't summarize or paraphrase Newton's second law of motion. Therefore, you need to quote it. So put it inside quotation marks. Usually quotations are put in italics. So if you need to refer to something and changing of text is not possible, then the technique you should use is quoting. Copying is reproducing the same work or as duplicating the same work without doing any change. You are not summarizing, you are not paraphrasing, you are not even quoting. So it is identical to the original source. Right? So this is possible, this is allowed actually, if you need to refer to a figure or a graph or maybe a table. Right? So you can't summarize a table, you can't summarize a photo, you can't paraphrase any graphical output, illustration. If you want to use it to show some facts, or if you want to use it to bring up some points, arguments in your literature review, you can copy and paste the graph or the photo, image, or whatever it is in your thesis, in your literature review, without doing any change. So that is allowed. And in academic writing, copying text is not recommended. Most of the institutions consider it as academic misconduct. So do not copy the text, but only if it is needed, you can copy other information such as graphical illustrations. Right? So when you're doing the literature review, always make sure that you are creating a link between past research work and your research topic. That's why you need a conclusion at the end of the literature review. You need to tell what has been done, how those research work have been done, the methodologies they have used, their conclusions, their results. So without just summarizing them, you need to try and create a link between the previous work and your current topic. If you don't do it, then it is difficult to prove your point. If someone asks, why are you doing this topic? Why is it needed at this point? Why should we fund it? So to prove it, to justify it, you need to create this link. And that's why flow and order of facts in your literature review is also important. Right? And a common mistake the undergraduates, especially the undergraduates, make in literature reviews, they try to review publications, each publication separately. It's wrong. Literature review is not about reviewing research papers one by one. That is wrong. You need to read all the papers, get the overall idea, put the information to your head, then plan your own review with some subtopics, have a flow, and plan each and every paragraph with your arguments as well. Arguments means you can comment on the research, the outputs. For example, nowadays, for almost every discipline, we have solutions like software-based solutions. So if some researcher has used manual calculation methods or else some outdated method, there you can comment or argue saying that even though this has already been done, they have not used the state-of-the-art technology. Therefore, to get better accuracy, better precision, or improved results, we can redo this research with the novel technologies available to us. Right? So that's how you justify it. That's how you create the link between previous research work and your topic. Right? So read carefully, plan the literature review, and then start writing. Or if you are using your computer, then start typing, which would be easier. Right? And as I said, you need to analyze the information as well. Right? You need to comment on it. You need to see if there are any shortcomings or if there is any gap that you can identify in the research publications that you found, or else if there are any mistakes they have done, or else sometimes you might find out that there are theories that you didn't know of, or else you might find out, or else you might come across a new software applications, right? So while reading, while reviewing, try to analyze the information as well. It will help you in your research when developing your methodology, when conducting the research work, experiments, data collection, data analysis, everything. So with your own work, this will really help you. Therefore, don't omit these things, right? So it's not just reading and writing. You need to achieve these objectives as well while doing the literature review. Okay? So plan the literature review, synthesize information, analyze it, and then finally present. So end your literature review with a conclusion, so that it will give you a good opening to the next chapter, the methodology chapter. So in your thesis also, you will have a nice flow of information, and when you present your research, maybe through a PowerPoint presentation session, or maybe through a Viva or whatever it is, it will have a good flow in your research, in your entire research from the beginning. Right? So we discussed about the knowledge gap. To speak a bit further about the knowledge gap. So knowledge gap is like the part of this journey that you are trying to cover up. Right? At the end of the literature review, you will know for sure where we are at the moment. So if you have referred to the recent publications as well, you will know where the previous researchers have ended their work. Right? And you are about to begin your work, and you have set some targets, you know what you are trying to solve. So the exact gap you are trying to cover is now very clear to you. It should be clear to you. If it is not clear to you, that means you have not properly done the literature review. You may have something with you, you may have some summary of previous work with you, but it has not helped you with identifying the knowledge gap. Right? So give it enough thought, plan it well, do a lot of reading, and then only start writing. Just because you need to write a review, don't do it. Just because the university is asking you to submit maybe a report on the literature review, don't do it. Or just for the sake of having a literature review, don't do it. Understand these requirements, understand these objectives, and then only do the review. And coming back to scope and limitations. So the scope is like what we define, or the boundary of the research, or the boundary of our work that we are going to do in the research. Like, for example, the study area, or maybe the location, or else the tools and techniques we are going to use, our timeline, or the theories, concepts, equations that we are going to use, or else the testing procedures, the standards we are going to refer to. Those things are defined under the scope of the research. When you define these at the beginning, then the people can't question you, because you have told them the boundary that you are going to work within. So this is defined by us or the researcher. You have the freedom to define this. But in limitations, these are external factors. They are limiting you. You can't control them. For example, if you don't have enough funding, if an external party is funding you, if they're only giving you a certain amount of money, which is barely enough to complete all the work that is required, so that is a limitation. Or else if the technology is not available to you, if the machines, software programs, if they are not available with you, then that's a limitation. Or sometimes even the weather can be a limitation. There can be time constraints. There can be labor and human resource related limitations. Right? In some cases, you can't find any research work, previous research work. So to get an idea about what has already been done and the techniques they have used, like to get some support from previous research work, you might try to find journal papers, research conference papers, but there might be no research papers available to you. So that is also a limitation. Okay? So these are external factors that are limiting your capability. So scope and limitations, you have to figure it out and define it at the beginning. especially before the methodology. You must show what your scope is, and you must explain what your limitations are in your thesis, in your presentations, so that the problems you might face later on, especially the questions that will be asked from you later on, you will have an answer to that. Right? So this is about the literature review and how to do a literature review. It was a very surface level discussion because we can't define an exact way to do a literature review. It depends on the study. It is very subjective. So compared to the previous lessons, we can't really give very specific instructions for the literature review. So this is up to the authors or as the research scholars and supervisors or the research team to decide. So the extent of the literature review and the number of sources you are going to refer to and the focus of your literature review and the expectations of the literature review, everything has to be decided by the team of researchers, and then you can conduct the review and present the findings. Okay, so that's it for today's lesson. So we will meet you with another video on research methods, which will be the final video of this lecture series. Thank you. Have a nice day.